If you're trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed with fertility advice, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax, your fertility podcast and antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist, teacher and campaigner for better fertility education. This podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex ed at school, with the aim of improving your understanding of your reproductive health and optimizing your fertility. Hello everybody, and welcome back, because this is the first episode of series 3 of Don't Tell Me to Relax, and I'm joined by Katy.
Hello, nice to be back.
It's so nice to be back, and we are really excited because we've been away for the summer, we've had a bit of a break, and now we are back for series 3. Our previous 2 series have recently smashed 30,000 downloads, which I don't know about you, Katy, but that blows my mind.
Bonkers. It's amazing. It's so cool to be like, because I remember when you asked me, like, oh, do you want to do this with me? Like, I don't know if it's going to like turn into anything, and then being like 30,000 downloads. Like,
I know. I feel like we've come a long way, because I remember thinking, well, you know, if 10 people download it and listen to it and find it helpful, then you know
cool.
that's enough. But 30,000, I'm really proud of what we've done. I'm really proud of all the guests that we've had on. It's just bloody brilliant. So it's great to be back and getting stuck in. Katy, how's your summer been? What have you been up to?
Oh, it's been really lovely. I was quite busy throughout the summer. I worked on a retreat in Cornwall, which was lovely, and then was just with clients for a while. Got a bit frazzled, not going to lie, and then laid on a beach in Lanzarote for 2 weeks, which just solved all the tiredness, and realised that, taking a break really, really works.
Yeah, it's good. So, it's really good, isn't it?
Practicing what to preach. Yeah. And really refreshed and ready to come back into work, which is such a nice feeling. Yeah. How was your summer?
It was good. I was away for a couple of weeks, and I was talking about it in clinic last night. It really made me laugh, because it literally took me a week to stop thinking about work. So I was just working, checking my emails, doing stuff. And then I was by the end of the first week, I was like, what are you doing? Just stop. And so I went into the second week, and all my family came out, and it was brilliant, because I really did properly switch off. And
nice.
Yeah, I came back really ready to go. That's why I was like, right, we're going to do foundations for fertility, because I was so energized. I was like, right, come on, let's do this. We can do it. So yeah, I came back 110 miles an hour and ready for September, because I love a bit of September.
Oh, me too. I love it.
So we're going to have a little bit of a swap in roles today, because we have realised that we've done 2 series about fertility, and we've never really properly discussed acupuncture. And so I thought, what a great way to start this series. This series is really going to be having a focus on IVF. It's sort of a main kind of theme of it, but we are going to be dipping in and out of sort of wider fertility issues or conversations. But I thought a good place to start would be what I do on a day-to-day basis, which is acupuncture for fertility. So I'm not going to interview myself about it, because that would just be weird. I'm going to hand over to Katy, who is going to ask me the questions, and I'm going to hopefully talk about it, which feels very odd. So over to you, Katy.
So, Hannah, lovely to have you here. So you're obviously an acupuncturist. What brought you to acupuncture in the beginning? What made you go, I want to stick needles in people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what's really weird is that I spent 3 years living in China. When I left university, I went and worked as a teacher. I lived in China for 3 years, never came across acupuncture, didn't know anything about it. Completely passed me by. I was living, working, speaking the language, nothing.
You're speaking the language?
Yeah, because I lived in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere. So I had to learn Chinese. I had Chinese 3 times a week, because if I didn't speak Chinese, I was not going to be able to communicate with anybody because nobody spoke English where I lived. So spoke, so you would think that at that point in my life, I maybe would have come across acupuncture. Anyway, nothing. Came back, worked for a charity for many years. And then when I was pregnant with my daughter, who is now 18, which is terrifying, but she's 18 now. When I was pregnant, they wanted to induce me because there was some issue with my placenta, wanted to induce me. I wanted to stay at home and have a home birth. Somebody said to me, have you ever tried acupuncture? It's really good for inducing labor. I was like, no, never tried it. I'll give anything a go once. Went to have acupuncture with Emma Cannon, who coincidentally lived around the corner from me, who is an amazing practitioner who really brought acupuncture and fertility to kind of the mainstream.
Yeah.
She wrote a lot of books about it. She was a really sort of, well-known practitioner. I went to her, had 2 sessions of acupuncture, went into labor on my due date, had a really straightforward birth. Something really magical happened, and I was absolutely blown away. So that was my first experience of it, which is really bizarre given I'd spent 3 years in China.
So funny, when things cross your path and when you think they should have, but then being like, oh no, didn't come
No,
across.
it's nothing. And it was weird because I didn't actually start to reach. I decided to retrain a couple of years later because I decided I was sort of done working in an office and I was done being kind of not being able to be flexible in my work with my family. And so when I went back to college and I went and did a degree in acupuncture at Reading, I started learning. You learn obviously a lot about Chinese history, the history of Chinese medicine. And it was like 2 worlds joined because I suddenly, it was like all what I understood about Chinese culture, Chinese food, the way people were really made a lot more sense when I studied acupuncture, because this idea of like hot and cold, yin and yang, balance, the foods that you eat, the way you kind of keep your body warm, which is what my students and people I lived with used to tell me about all the time. They were so kind of in tune with the seasons and how their body was, and exercise. It was so, and I was like, I don't really understand what that's all about. I didn't really, as a Westerner, I didn't really get it. And then when I studied Chinese medicine, I was like, oh my God, it all makes sense. And now I would love, and I am going to go back one day to go back to China with kind of my knowledge of being there for so long and my knowledge of Chinese medicine. I feel like it's come full circle, and I would love to go back and visit again.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So how does acupuncture work? Like you're mentioning Chinese medicine there.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give us a bit of an overview of?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that's probably a very big question. Give us an overview of Chinese medicine.
In 30 seconds. So, I mean, acupuncture is a part of Chinese medicine. There's also Chinese herbs, there's Chinese massage, and there's acupuncture. And acupuncture really works it's about creating balance. As I said before, it's all about creating harmony and balance within the body. And acupuncture believes there's 12 meridians or 12 channels of energy that run through your body. And when you put needles into somebody, you're putting needles into one of those channels, and you're stimulating those points to kind of either increase the energy or decrease the energy. So to bring about some balance to the system, to the sort of holistic body, basically. And I guess from a kind of scientific point of view, a lot of the research around acupuncture is all about it encourages neurotransmitters. So it encourages signals and messages to the brain to alleviate pain or to stimulate hormones. And it's this kind of connection of the needles and the neurotransmitters that really explain how acupuncture works, kind of more from a Western medicine perspective.
So clever / bodies are so weird how they respond to stuff. It feels really in some ways counterintuitive to stick a needle in you that's not got I mean, if you're thinking from the Western medicine perspective of sticking a needle in you with medicine in, you're like, yeah, I get that, but just sticking a needle in for this, being very flippant here, but for the sake of sticking a needle in, being and that's going to reduce the pain. It's
bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I I guess if you think about it, our body is sort of continuously communicating, you know, bits of our body is continuously communicating with bits of other bits of our body. And
Mm,
so I guess it kind of, if you think about acupuncture as helping that communication, either increasing it where it needs more or
mm.
decreasing it where perhaps where it's got too much. And I mean, I have to be honest, I spent 4 years studying Chinese medicine and studying acupuncture thinking, how does this work? Like, what's this all about? I'm a real kind of, practical, concrete, I need evidence
Me
person.
too.
So when I was like, everyone was like, are you sure you want to be an acupuncturist? I was like, yeah, because I know personally from having it that it did like really mad stuff and it really worked. And so I'm sort of got to that place where I don't really need to understand it fully. I just need to experience it and know that it does work. And I see it, you know, even now I think, still don't quite get this needles in, you know, how does it work with fertility? You know, it does, you know, question my head quite a lot, but we see it in clinic all the time. We see the outcomes, we see the positivity, you know, that it brings. So it's that evidence that I use to kind of, you know, not spend too much time trying to think about it, because that literally hurts my brain.
I feel exactly the same about reflexology,
Yeah.
where I'm like, I just wish there was a scientific study where they could say blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I see it every day in
Yeah.
clinic where someone comes in like almost vibrating with anxiety and then they leave like a different person. And it's like, if that's not evidence enough, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave it at that.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about when you're saying like bringing the body back into balance, so like bringing the energy down in other like some ways, or like bringing it up depending on what you need, like is that kind of how we can link it to fertility, like how you can decide on like what needs treatment, like yeah, can you
Yeah.
just talk about that?
Yeah, so I guess there's a, you know, there's been a lot of, over the years that I've been in practice, the association of acupuncture and fertility has just grown and grown and grown, and it's become more and more, um, you know, linked to supporting fertility. It's more widely acknowledged. Lots and lots of people now use acupuncture alongside IVF, or whether they're trying to conceive naturally, going through IUI, whatever the situation, it's become a really popular therapy. In fact, I think it might be the most popular therapy to use alongside any kind of Western medicine, or, you know, just trying to conceive naturally.
Mm.
And the reason is because there's, you know, I guess there's three main areas that acupuncture really supports fertility. And the first one is that idea of the communication signals that we talked about before, the sort of neurotransmitters. So research, and I will link the research in the show notes, research has shown that acupuncture can really help stimulate that sort of conversation, if you like, that has to happen for the reproductive system to work. So that's between your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your ovaries, that HPO axis. Studies have shown that acupuncture can really help stimulate that communication. So it can really help with your FSH levels, the production of LH. So that is a really powerful tool to use if somebody, maybe their hormones are out of whack. It can really help bring balance back into that communication system. So that's one way. Another way is blood flow to the uterus. So, you know, we were just talking about it before. People often can struggle with thin linings, or they might struggle with like difficult periods or heavy periods, this kind of the actual reproductive system itself. So we use a lot of acupuncture needles around the lower abdomen, and that can really help bring blood flow to the uterus, which can help with the lining. It can help with follicular development. Some studies have shown it can help with egg quality. So there's some really good evidence there for a very sort of clear link between acupuncture and its positive effect, you know, actually in the reproductive organs and the uterus. And then the third way, and this is kind of what's really easy really to see, is the stress levels. So just bringing down stress levels, so that adrenaline, that cortisol sort of fight or flight place that people become stuck in, or they have, you know, levels of it all the time because of either a busy life, stressful life, going through fertility struggles itself is often very, very stressful. And so acupuncture switches off that adrenaline, that cortisol response, and brings the body from kind of, you know, the sort of fight or flight and back into that rest and digest. So you see it, I see it, you know, people walk in literally buzzing, you
Yeah.
know, stressed out, anxious, overwhelmed, we have a conversation, we take pulses, we look at tongues, people lie down, we put needles in, and you can literally see the body very quickly go into that kind of more relaxed state. And we know that when the body's in that rest and digest state, that everything is working better. Everything. Your reproductive system, your immune system, your hormone system, your digestive system, everything is allowed to kind of work better because there's more space for that to happen. So it's very powerful stuff.
I love it. I mean, I've had treatment with you, and it's just it's dead good. I mean, this is just me being like curious now. So when you take like the pulse at the start of the treatment, like what are you kind of feeling for there, or like what's that telling you? And then can that change even by the end of one treatment?
Yes. So when you take the pulse, you're feeling for the kind of energetics of the organs. So in Chinese medicine, there's 12 channels, 12 organs. And when you take a pulse on one side, you're feeling 6 different organs. So each position relates to a yin organ and a yang organ. And what you're feeling when you feel both sides is you're feeling for the, like literally I studied it for years and years and years. And I am not the best pulse taker in the world. I'm a very kind of like overarching pulse taker, in that what you're feeling for basically is, does this body need energy putting in, or does it need energy calming down, or does it need a bit of both? And so when you feel pulses, sometimes you can feel pulses and they can be quite deficient. So that body really needs a boost. So you might do some acupuncture needles, you might use some nice heat, you might use some moxa to really sort of put the energy into the body. And sometimes you can take somebody's pulse and their pulses are like banging, they're like up and they're really frenetic, and you can feel them and you're like, wow, this person needs calming down. They need the energy to kind of settle. They need it to move around the body. And sometimes, which is probably the most common, is people need a bit of both. So they need a bit of a boost and they need a bit of a calm down. And that's kind of
interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. And that's what you're feeling for in a pulse. And what you want to feel as a practitioner is you feel the pulses at the beginning of an appointment, you put the needles in, and then you feel the pulses at the end, and you're looking for that pulse change to see if the acupuncture has done its job or not.
So it's so clever. I get really excited about it. Anyway, so we
be training as an acupuncturist, Katy.
Oh no, don't, because
I feel it in my water.
We went to an acupuncture conference. I mean, and I sort of like snuck in as a reflexologist, and by the end of the day, I was like, Hannah, I want to be an acupuncturist. I was like, Anyway, so like you were saying, it's become a really popular treatment alongside supporting fertility. And I would say, particularly, at least from the impression I get, alongside IVF. So like how does it work with IVF? Because obviously there's a lot of like medications and stuff going into the body to like stimulate the reproductive system, or like temporarily kind of shut down the reproductive system so the clinic can take complete control over when the cycle starts. So how does acupuncture come in with IVF?
So I guess, they've just released, I think it was in July this year, they've just released a really good study where they've like looked at all the evidence around acupuncture and IVF, and they've brought it all together. And I can't remember the statistic, but it's something like people who have acupuncture, and usually when we're talking about acupuncture, we're talking about at least, a few sessions, like 4 or 5 sessions before they go into treatment, and then they have acupuncture alongside their IVF. It shows something like a 40% increase in positive outcomes from the IVF. So it's really great research, and it's really good evidence. And I guess the way that we work in our clinic to kind of really boost people's chances and optimizing their IVF cycles is that we like to work with people before they even, before they've even started their IVF. So lots of the really good clinics now are talking about this idea of you prepare before you go into IVF. You don't just kind of like, sign up and crack on with your next cycle. Preparation is key. And so that's where we really can come in, because IVF clinics are very much like, okay, we want to look at your meds, we want to look at maybe your hormones, we want to do a scan, and they talk about these are the drugs that we can do, and they might talk about, nutrition a little bit, and that's sort of their role in it. Whereas our role in it is we look at absolutely everything. You know, we start from the top of the body, we work right the way down. So we're looking at sleep, we're looking at your digestion, we're looking at your menstrual cycle, we're looking at your vaginal health, we're looking at what you have for your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're looking at how much water you have, what illnesses you have, you know, your support structures. We go through everything that we know can impact positively or negatively your health and therefore your fertility. And we want to kind of, you know, make improvements. So, you know, lots of people who come for treatment with us as a sort of sideline say that they start to sleep better, that their digestion is working better, that they get less ill, that they feel they have more energy. So all of those things are going to help with that preparation, because we know it takes about 90 days to kind of impact egg quality, impact sperm quality. So ideally, if we can sit with somebody, you know, our first assessments are at least an hour and a half where we go through everything. People fill in reports, we write reports, we come up with a plan. We leave no stone unturned, because we think that by, you know, looking at all those areas and making improvements, and they don't have to be huge improvements. It's just about, you know, having that conversation about sleep hygiene, or making sure you're drinking enough water, making sure you're getting enough protein, making sure you're addressing stress, or you've got a boundary between work and rest. You know, it's about sort of having those conversations, making, you know, and supporting people to make those lifestyle changes. If you do it in lots of different places, then that can really build up to a really positive impact, and really sort of enhance somebody's sort of chances and health and wellness, so that when they get to their IVF, they're in a really, really good place, and they're ready to go. And so obviously there's all the lifestyle stuff, and then people come for regular treatment with us. So sometimes people come every week, sometimes they come twice a month. We don't really like to see people anything less than that, because, you know, we need time to work on the body. We need time to kind of use our acupuncture and use our skills to kind of get the body into that nice state, and work on sleep, work on digestion, so that they're in a good place. And then when people go through that IVF, we usually like to see people weekly, because we like to work alongside the drugs. So, for example, you talked about down regulation. So lots of people can start to feel quite hot, or they can get headaches, or they might find their sleep goes. So we can really help address that as much as we can with our needles, and, you know, with the support, you know, while they're going through that. And then, you know, if they're in the stimulation phase, then we're really boosting the body. You know, we're really kind of putting as much energy in as possible to help with that follicular development. And obviously we're there as a check-in. You know, people can have a nice lie down, they can tell us how they're getting on. We can kind of offer that sort of emotional support and be there, just be that other person. And then there's the egg collection. After egg collection, we like to work kind of reducing inflammation and kind of moving everything in the body to kind of, you know, get everything circulating again. People can get constipated, so we like to work on the digestion. People are going for transfer, then obviously we do acupuncture on the day of treatment if possible. Not always. And there's, you know, there's a big study that was done around having acupuncture on the day of treatment. And yes, it can be really beneficial, but only if it's not stressful. You know, if you're stressing getting into an acupuncture appointment, then you're stressing to get to your transfer, you're stressing to get back to an acupuncture appointment. We're like, no, don't do it that way. We like to make sure that we can time it so it's beneficial. It's not another thing that you feel like you have to do. And then often people come and see us in the 2-week wait. Or sometimes they often come and see you because people are done with needle.
Yeah.
But they might be like, you know what? I just want to go and see Katy and have my feet rubbed. And so, you know, we are totally up for that, because we're like, whatever works best. We are there to support the person.
Yeah, I always say
Whatever
that.
might be. And if you don't want to come for needles in the 2-week wait, maybe you want to work with Carly, do some mindset work, maybe you want to work with you, then absolutely fine. You know, it's all about giving the best support to that person as they're going through treatment.
Yeah, totally. I always say that to people if they ask kind of, oh, like, when should I have reflexology or when should I have acupuncture? I'm like, you do you. Like, if at the end of the day, if you hate needles, acupuncture is not going to be the one. If you hate someone touching your feet, reflexology is not going to be the one. So, like, see how you respond to the treatment and what your body's telling you need.
Yeah, exactly.
So in like, that's obviously like a very specific circumstance of like going through IVF, kind of what a treatment plan might look like. And I definitely a lot of your clients that I see follow that almost to the T.
Yeah.
What, like, kind of how many treatments typically would you like to have with someone in order to
Yeah.
really start seeing changes in the menstrual cycle?
Yeah. I mean, I always say 3 months. But sometimes it can be 6 months. And, people who come with like long term, who've had maybe endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, these are, deep rooted, often lifelong conditions that have been around for a long time. And so change takes time, healing the body, changing the body, it's going to take time. And you know what? I would love to say that, acupuncture is the cure for everything. I would love to be able to say that, but it's not. And because, if you've got a complex situation like someone preparing for IVF and they've got endometriosis, it's a multi-disciplined approach to addressing that endometriosis that's going to get you the best
100%.
results. It's not just acupuncture alone. You've got to be looking at diet. You've got to be looking at it from a nutritional point of view. You've got to be looking at it from a stress management point of view. You've got to be looking at it from a Western medicine point of view. Having really good supplements. It's like you have a toolbox,
Yeah.
and you've got to bring in as many things as possible to that kind of person to really help address something, because it's such a complex disease. And I wish that acupuncture was the cure for everything, but it really isn't. It's always done in partnership with the person that you're working with, and it's always done as part of a wider program, from either that's from an IVF clinic, from a nutritionist, from a reflexologist, whatever it is. It's like that multidisciplined approach is the way that you get the best change, I think. So 3 months, 6 months is, what we like ideally. That said, if somebody is about to start a round of IVF and they want to come and have acupuncture, then absolutely come. But, it's about what can we do in that time? So what we can do, if someone is about to start, what we can do during that cycle is really support them emotionally. So really work on their stress, really respond to how they go week by week through their cycle. But in terms of like the preparation bit, we can't do the preparation bit. We can just do the support through the cycle. So it is very different what we can offer, and we're always very clear on that.
Yeah. So what is the difference between someone like yourself who's a fertility acupuncturist versus seeing don't want to say just an acupuncturist, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, acupuncturists, all of them are amazing. And what I would say the difference is that when you go and see somebody who's a fertility acupuncturist or someone who specializes in fertility, hopefully what you're getting is somebody who has spent a lot of time training in further education around Western medicine approaches to fertility and Chinese medicine approaches to fertility. So what you're getting is a very sort of specialist knowledge, because acupuncture is amazing, and you could go and see a general practitioner and you would still get benefit from that treatment. But if you go and see somebody who specializes in fertility, what you're getting is that really holistic understanding of the Western medicine approach, the Western approach to testing and investigations, and the holistic approach, so the acupuncture approach. And so often I think what we offer that is really unique is that we can help signpost people. People often come to us and they're like, they feel a bit lost, they feel a bit overwhelmed, they feel a bit confused as to, have I had the right investigations? What investigations do I need to do? What do I need to be thinking about? And so what we can really do is help guide people with that and give lots and lots of information. So we can help make sure they've had the right tests, make sure their partner has had the right tests. We can help signpost to them to really good clinics or clinicians or consultants that might specialize in certain areas, so that they're in front of the right people at the right time. Because so many people go into treatment really not understanding what might be happening. And and we've worked with lots and lots of people who say, they might be 3 rounds of IVF in, and they come to us and they say, I didn't have a clue. I just did a round of IVF because I thought that's what I needed to do. And, so we just take a step back from that and we can share our knowledge and say, okay, these are the tests, these are the investigations, these are the things that you might want to think about. So people are sort of informed, empowered and prepared. And, that doesn't even mean to be for IVF alone. It's for the natural fertility. If you're trying to conceive naturally, often people can come and they'll be like, I've had a 10-minute conversation with my GP and they've referred me for these tests and they've told me to carry on trying for another 6 months. And people feel a bit like there must be something else that I can do. And that's where we really fill that grey area of, that you can sit in front of your GP and you get the basic tests, and then you can go to a fertility clinic. And there's this whole area in between where you can have sperm investigations done. You can look at your vaginal health. You can look at your nutrient levels. You can have a transvaginal scan. You can do lots of investigations to try and get to the bottom of what might be impacting your fertility and what you can do about it. So that kind of Western knowledge, that specialist knowledge, is, I think, what you get from a fertility acupuncturist.
Yeah, you get a lot in the initial, well, I mean, I'm thinking just of the initial session, but like it's so much more than just tell me about your life and they'll stick some needles in you. Like there's real kind of like an investigative part to the work that you're doing there, and like really making sure that the client is getting the right support for what they need.
Yeah. And we know, obviously we're not consultants.
Yeah.
We don't have the answers, but what we have is information. And because we're not like attached to a clinic, because we're not kind of, working for anybody other than for ourselves, the patient is at the center of our decisions. So we can give that broad spectrum of, these are all the different approaches, and these are all the different things that you could do. Here's all the information, sort of learn about it, read up about it, and make a decision for yourself. Because the thing that we see a lot, and I know you see it a lot, is that people can sit in front of one consultant who'll say, this is the approach, this is what we think you should do. And then they can go and sit in front of another consultant and they'll say, this is the approach, this is what we think we should do. And, for example, the whole, conversation around reproductive immunology, should you use steroids? Is it a thing? Are NK cells a thing? Some consultants are like, no, it's not a thing. Others are like, it absolutely is. And as a person going through it, it can be so difficult to know. And so what we can do is give, these are all the things. We don't know what the answer is, but, research, find out, speak to people, do kind of information gathering, because then you can make an informed decision. And that, I think, is the best that you can do when you're going through fertility struggles.
Yeah, I totally agree that having the information and making an informed choice rather than just this is what I've been told, or like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to throw money at it and hope for the best kind of thing. And it's really important to have that information.
I think lots of people often go to places because they know somebody who went there. So they'll have, my friend went to this clinic and it worked for her, so that's why I'll go to that clinic, which might be a good decision. But I always say it's really important to do your research.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Acupuncturists as well as fertility.
I was just going to say that. It's like you need to find someone that you gel with. It's the same with, like, they always talk about like therapists, and like it's like dating almost, being like, you need to find like the right person for you, because otherwise it's just not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do people find out more about what you do? Like, what where do you work? Tell us all about the clinics you have. Tell us everything.
I work in 3 clinics. So I work in Balham and Streatham, and I've got a community clinic, which is a low-cost clinic that I do every other Monday, trying to kind of, make sure that the services are as available as they possibly can be, because I know it's private medicine and I know not everybody can access it. So there's 3 different ways to work with me. And also, obviously, we've got a whole team. We are all fertility support trained acupuncturists. So if you're looking for an acupuncturist who specializes in fertility, then myself and Anga on the team have completed the fertility support diploma, which in my opinion is the best education that is out there for acupuncturists who are wanting to specialize in fertility. There are lots of fertility acupuncturists out there who are great, but if you find somebody who is a fertility support trained acupuncturist, you know that they have done some considerable in-depth training on fertility. It's a 6-month, I think it's about 6 months. It usually takes about 6 months to do the diploma, and it is vigorous, let me tell you. So fertility support trained, I'll put the link on. You know you're always going to be in good hands. The rest of the team are all in the middle of training for it as well. I'm finding it, difficult because it is a really hard course alongside their work. So, hopefully at some point we will all be fertility support trained, but, look at people's qualifications, look at the further education that they've done in fertility, because that will make sure you're in front of a really good person. We're in South London, obviously, and we also do appointments online. So even if you can't come in for acupuncture, but you want some kind of guidance on your cycles, on, next steps, on investigations, tests, then, you can also book in online as well.
Amazing. And have you got any like free stuff coming up?
Well, we're currently doing the Foundations for Fertility. So, if you're listening to this live, then that is ongoing at the moment. You just need to register. I will also put a link in the show notes for that. That's 5 weeks of fertility education. So I know our clinics are full of people who come in and they say, when we talk about, these are the things that can impact your fertility, these are the things that might be impairing your fertility, this is menstrual cycle kind of information. People are like, why did I not know this stuff before? Like, how have I got to being a 36-year-old woman having no clue about cervical mucus or, what's right or wrong with a cycle? And people are really cross about it, and rightly bloody so, because it leads to people not being informed about their fertility. And the two things that people say is, I wish I'd known more and I wish I'd done something sooner. And I feel like fertility education really addresses that, because we want to be giving people these messages about understanding their fertility from their teens and from their 20s, because people might make different decisions about coming off contraception, addressing their menstrual cycle issues, addressing health issues sooner, so that they're better prepared for when they are ready to conceive. And what we see is that people come in at 35, 36, and I'm not saying it's too late, but they're like, hang on a minute, I've now discovered I've got endometriosis, I've got polycystic ovaries, and there's a sudden rush and a pressure to kind of address that and then try and conceive on top of it. So, the sooner people understand and learn and inform themselves about this stuff, the better. So that's why we do Foundations for Fertility, because we're really trying to plug that gap before people end up sitting in our clinic. So that is 5 weeks free. If you've missed it, you can catch up anytime, because we're going to, it will be accessible for the next 6 months. So if you've missed it and you're not listening live, then it's still available. The links will be in the show notes. And obviously there's this podcast, which has got, lots and lots of episodes about fertility information and fertility education, because we really want to get as much information out there as possible.
Well, thank you, Hannah. It's been lovely having you as a guest on your own podcast.
I really enjoyed being interviewed. It was great.
Great. But yeah, it's been... thanks for asking me to do it. It's lovely to hear like how you came to it, and just hear you speak more about this subject that you're so passionate about. And I can absolutely vouch for Hannah as an acupuncturist. You saw me through a very difficult time last year, and kept me in a much calmer headspace, and it really helped with, as I've talked about on here, like my PMS, which can get out of hand if I'm not careful. So Hannah's a wonderful acupuncturist.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me, Katy. And it's lovely to be back.
Oh, such a treat. I'm so happy. We're so happy to be back in your ears. We love doing this so much. So yeah, thanks for listening, and thank you for all the downloads, and like just keep telling people about the podcast. Like we want to, as we've said, like we're both so passionate about people getting this information like well before they need it. So just share it with anyone that you think will find it helpful.
If you've enjoyed listening to this and want to find out more, then come and join my free community in Facebook. We have loads of resources. You can catch up on all our previous webinars and be the first to know about forthcoming events. To sign up, just follow the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with myself or one of the team, then please see our website, hannahpearn.com, where you can book in directly or organise a discovery call to find out how we can support your fertility and your reproductive health.